Hello, welcome to your WordPress training video, where we will be navigating iThemes security, general settings, and user management. Let's kick things off with iThemes security, which is your website's personal bodyguard. iThemes security is chock full of features that help protect and keep your website safe. Now, if you simply left click on it, you will see the dashboard for your iThemes security. It'll show you some lockouts, some database backups, brute force attacks, all types of nifty information you can use to help protect your website. But what we find the most important thing we end up using it for is the lockout feature, failed logins, and whitelisting users. So let's go ahead and discuss failed logins and lockouts. In order to get here, you're going to want to head over to your logs. And when you click on your logs, you'll see something that looks a little bit like this. Now this is a little overwhelming, but allow me to explain. This is the general log of your website. Now I've circled in red what an example of a user lockout may look like, while of course blurring out sensitive user information. In the purple is the causation leading to a user or host lockout. What we generally find is, in the majority of cases, a lockout occurs due to a failed validation. So these failed validations in the purple, if you look to the left, demonstrate a reCAPTCHA failure. This happens to the best of us, but it is an extremely important example as to why we must make sure to select the I agree to these terms on login, or we risk a failed validation lockout. But let's say you are in a state where someone on your team or you have a client who is currently experiencing a failed validation lockout. How do we fix that? We will need to whitelist them. We can do that over here. Now to whitelist a user, you must head over to settings underneath your security. You can do that by going to the left over here, where we have settings, or on the dashboard of your iThemes security in the top right. For convenience, let's click over here on the left. Now, there's a lot of options here, and I do encourage you to get familiar with them to have a better understanding of how your website will function. I wouldn't recommend touching anything here because we've preset it to be the most secure, but it is nice to have an understanding of all the features that come with your iThemes security. So either way, to whitelist a user, this is the fastest and most effective way I find. I head over to Configure, and then I scroll down on the global settings to Authorized Host. What I do here is I will enter the IP address of the authorized host that I want to make acceptable for my website. I would also recommend clicking the Add My Current IP to the host list. That way you don't risk getting locked out in the future, in case you forget to do that pesky CAPTCHA. As a quick reminder, you will need to validate the IP address that you are whitelisting. I would not recommend simply following the log, because although the log may seem intuitive, oh, this user tried to log in, they tried several times, it corresponds with a time frame when they said they were locked out, it is best to be secure rather than take a risky validation. Because if, on the rare chance, a brute force attacker was trying to get in at the same time, you risk allowing them have, you risk having that vulnerability by whitelisting them. So what I would recommend is have them verify their IP address for you, and you can actually visit a website. I will put the URL on screen for you. It'll show you your IP address. Have them relay that number to you, then add that number over here. Now let's move on to general WordPress settings, which is sort of the control room of your website. From here, you would simply head over to settings right here, or if you're on the dashboard, it's as simple as scrolling down, finding settings, and clicking on general, or just left click on settings. Great. Now, in settings, you can alter the site title, tagline, language, time zone, date, format, and admin email. All of this is really important because it helps give your site its identity. So, for example, you'll want to change your tagline to be something that your website's about. For this mock website design, it's baking. So we say, our tagline is "We're baking with love." And in fact, you'd probably put more. You could probably say like, if, for example, you're a Washington-based company, uh, a Washington-based company that bakes with love, or something of that sort. Keep it brief, concise, but let it summarize what you do. You can see your WordPress URL. You can see the administration email address, which is quite important to change here. You want to make sure that's your central email address that everything you want going to. Because a lot of the forms that you use, via Gravity Forms over here, which we'll cover later on, will email to that administration email address. If you scroll down a little bit more, you'll find things such as your time zone, your language, what kind of date format you'd like, and day your week starts on. This is good for organizational purposes. Overall, the most important thing is generally just the tagline, the administration email address, your site title, and verifying that this information over here is correct for your location and area. Now, let's talk about user management. So let's say you want to add someone new to your team, someone who wants to do a blog post, or you added a new web designer, which is different from a developer, but that's just nuance. And you want to give them access to your websites. That's fine, no worries. So you'll head over here to your dashboard. So you just log in, head over to users. When you left click on this, you'll get a demonstrated list of whoever is currently a user on your website. Now, generally, you would keep this information safe. You wouldn't want to display it publicly like I am doing here. But for my purposes, this is a fake website. It doesn't actually exist. It's just here for demonstrative purposes. Now, there's lots of things you can do here. You can scroll over and click Edit. You can delete accounts that you're not currently on. And you can also add new users up here. So if I add a new user, you'll need a username. You'll need their email you want them to associate with that username. Think of where password resets will go. Add in a first name and last name, that's helpful for organizational purposes. And you can generate a password. I would recommend just using the generated password and have them reset it. But if you want to go ahead and add one in, just make sure it meets the strong criteria, or creating a user account may fail. Now, the most important thing here is scrolling down to role. You'll see you have subscriber, contributor, author, editor, and administrator. Try to be careful with the number of people you give administrator access to, because they will have complete access to your websites. If you were, for example, an editor or author, you wouldn't see all of these vertical navigational panels over here. You may only see post if you were, say, editor or author. So those permissions are very important. And if for some reason someone doesn't have access to a proper permission, you can always edit or provide them the appropriate permission from an administrator account. But once again, I would recommend for your team and staff that you trust, administrator is fine. Just be wary not to grant it to everyone who's trying to gain access to your website. That can be a security vulnerability.